Hello, everyone, and I want to welcome you all back for another lively discussion on aging today. We are the podcast where together we explore the many options to aging on your terms. You can find Aging Today and our past 8 years of programming on our website. All you got to do is dial into 𝙍𝙤𝙣 And then those of you who would prefer to find us on your favorite podcast channels, such as Spotify, Pandora, and we're on so many. And today we're going to be on YouTube from here on out. So we're excited about that. And it is in video form. We're looking forward to expanding our footprint into the marketplace. So many of you are reaching out and wanting more information on the aging process. And then I do want to hear from all of you, our listeners out there. We want to know all the questions that you're asking on the aging process. And if you know of any aging experts that you would like to introduce to Aging Today, just reach out to me, your host, Mark Turnbull. And my email is mark@agingtoday.us. That's Mark with a K at agingtoday.us. Well, one of the things that we always say on Aging Today is if you're not too busy being born, you're too busy aging.
If I'd been out till 2:45, would you lock the door? Will you still need me? Will you still feed me when I'm 64?
And now the podcast where together we discuss proactive aging on your terms, connecting to the professional advice of our special guests while creating better days throughout the aging process. Now here's your host, Mark Turnbull.
And we're all aging at different levels at different times on this earth. And so we're open to all kinds of discussion. Today, we're going to be talking about aging in our latter years, and I am in my latter years. I'm a boomer, and our guest is also a boomer, and he's written a book. He's an author, he's a speaker, and he's all about conscious eldering. Boy, that's a big word, Ron. That is a huge word, but we're going to talk about that, and our guest is Ron Pevny, and he is an author of the book, Conscious Living, Conscious Aging, Claiming the Gifts of Elderhood. Ron, welcome to Aging Today.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm so excited about your book because I did get a chance to read it, and it was, being a boomer, I mean, who wouldn't resonate with this book? I mean, I want to get into, some of the specifics of your motivations for writing it, and we'll get into all of that. But before we do that, we always start out our segments with what's in your story. Not so much, Ron, what's in your wallet, but if you've got a lot, you can feel free to share with me. But we want to know what's in your story. What led you to be an author? What led you to be an author with so much wisdom and experience to write down for the rest of us a plan for moving forward?
Well, Mark, I think the relevant parts of my story began about 40 years ago. And at that point, I had just completed my graduate education at the California Institute of Integral Studies in East-West Counseling Psychology. And frankly, I did not have any idea what felt right to me in terms of how I was going to give my gifts, make a difference in the world, find fulfillment. And in a rather dark night of the soul that happened for me at that time, I got together a couple of friends, and we went and we engaged in, I guess you would say, an unofficial vision quest up at Mount Shasta in California. I knew a little bit about vision questing, not much, but we went there. We spent time on the land, just opening ourselves to guidance and to clarity about what's next for all of us. And I had one of those ineffable experiences there where I knew beyond any shadow of a doubt that my work was to help people in moving through life transitions. Especially people who were at a point like myself where I just felt really lost. I didn't know where I was headed. I felt I was in between. And so way back when, in the very late 70s, I became one of the first guides of wilderness rites of passage experiences. I found mentors who were incredible teachers to me, and I began doing this work. And it was my primary work for a bunch of years, 25 years or so. I had to do some other things to make a living at times, but this is the work of my heart, where my gifts came through the best, where I was most alive. And I did that until around the year 2000. And around the year 2000, I found myself thinking a lot about, what people are really in need of support in moving through transition where there seems to be nothing available for them. No rite of passages of any kind, almost nothing. And then I realized that it was people who were reaching retirement age and who were in what really seemed to be a huge transition for whatever comes after retirement. And about that same time, as synchronicity would have it, I heard from two wise elders, 15 years older than me, because I was just in my early 50s at the time. And they said, Ron, we want to create some kind of a rite of passage for moving into elderhood. Would you join us? And I said, well, I'm not an elder and I don't have the wisdom you have. They were the wise elders. And they said, that's okay. You know a lot about transition and rites of passage. We'd like you to join us. And that began this 25 years of work that I've been so committed to now. I watched people use these experiences we created to truly find meaning and purpose as they were moving into a new chapter. I got excited by it. I got gradually older and finally began to realize that I was no longer unqualified, that I was entering my early elderhood myself, and this is the work I really wanted and needed to do. It was the expression of my sense of calling for this point in my life. And so here I am. And as I did this work for several years, I realized that I've got some things to share that could reach a whole lot more people than 10 or 15 people on a wilderness retreat, and that I should put it in a book. And so I wrote my book, Conscious Living, Conscious Aging, and it came out in 2014. And I've continued to do this work, hopefully gotten a little bit wiser, have grown, have learned, and I realized last year that I have a lot more to say that I think needed to go into a new edition, an expanded, updated edition of my book. My publisher agreed, and so this new edition came out about a month ago or so. And so here I am, an author with a wonderful opportunity to have lots of conversations with people like yourself, to share what I know with people who really are open to learning. And I find it very fulfilling to be able to talk about my work in this way. So thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, no problem. Well, and the reason why I do these podcasts is because I get to meet incredible people like yourself. And one of my favorite Hebrew words is chachma. Chachma literally is translated into wisdom. And wisdom is translated into living life skillfully. And isn't that what we all want to do? Is when we see somebody and we see somebody that is an elder, many times, not always, but many times, those are the people that have learned to live life skillfully, whatever capacity that they're living. And so I'm very excited to dive into your book, Conscious Living and Conscious Aging, and picking apart the pieces to glean some of my own wisdom and skill in how I can live my best life possible at this stage of my life. I'm 66, Ron. I'm right there, and I know many of our listening audience are those boomers out there, and retirement is one of those funny things, isn't it? We look forward to it to some extent, and then we don't know what to do with it when we get there.
Yeah, I think so many people, Mark, for many years, in many cases, are thinking about what they're going to retire from, thinking about it years and years in advance. And then when it comes, all of a sudden, they are hit with the realization that I haven't given much thought. I don't have any sense of what I'm retiring to. And that can be a big, big dark hole for a lot of people. And I think my work is very much about helping people to begin, before they retire, to envision what's going to give them purpose and meaning after they retire.
Yeah.
Because for so many of us, as we know, our identity and our sense of purpose is tied to our work or our careers.
Yeah.
But if we're in a position where we have let go of those, God, our very well-being, study after study shows that our mental and our physical and our emotional and spiritual well-being depends upon having a strong sense of purpose. And so we need to be finding purpose. And if we haven't already found it by the time we retire, there are many things we can do to help us get in touch with a sense of purpose and meaning in our lives and in our elderhood.
Yeah. And let's start with those two words, purpose and meaning. What is purpose? I mean, what is the aim in understanding and finding our purpose in life? And then what is the aim and meaning to meaning? What is it that we're looking for in our lives?
Yeah. And I think often those two terms have a lot in common with each other. I don't see them as being worlds apart. We human beings are gifted with a lot of energy. We're gifted with the ability to look toward the future, to try to envision what our life can be like. And I think we are built so that this energy that we're gifted with has to find expression. If it just sits there without expression, this energy can begin to unravel us. It certainly doesn't help us physically or emotionally. And the kind of expression that is most helpful and most life-giving for people is expression where what we're doing is for something bigger than just our own entertainment or our own security. It's a sense of purpose, of making a difference in the world somehow, of somehow giving who we are and giving the gift of our energy to the world around us. And I think that's what purpose is. It's finding our way for a particular point in life of giving our gifts and of channeling our energy for the well-being of the world around us and for our own well-being. Does that help?
And it does a little bit. I think that purpose is what is it that drives me to get out of bed in the morning? You got to have some kind of a purpose, but the meaning is something that is even deeper than that. Is that how you see it?
Yeah, and I think that the meaning is how for me, the meaning is how our particular purpose at a given time, or our sense of purpose, fits into the larger picture of how we view and understand our lives and our progression through life and our growth. And so much of what I believe that conscious eldering, or it's oftentimes conscious aging, is about, is seeing our life as not just a series of random events that have happened and we've responded to them, in positive ways or maybe not so positive, but rather seeing that there is some kind of almost a story that wants to unfold through each of our lives.
Yeah.
And it's not just a bunch of random events. And the more we can get in touch with this unfolding story of growth, then the more we're able to see the events of our life up to now and the events of our life moving forward as fitting into some kind of a bigger picture. And that bigger picture for me is how I understand the meaning.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that we all have a purpose for living on this earth, and we all want to derive the meaning, because that's what makes us unique as human beings, is that we have that consciousness, we have that ability to do that. And I love, the title of your book, Conscious Living, Conscious Aging, meaning that you have to, I'm assuming that when you use the word conscious, you're talking about being aware and being involved, being engaged, having an aim. And I look at where we are in this world today, and I see so many people wandering around aimlessly, and they just don't have a purpose. They don't have a reason for and moving in the direction that they're moving. Do you see it the similar ways or differently?
Oh, no, I definitely see that. And I think that's one of the main motivations for me in doing this work. And, I'm 76. A lot of people say, well, Ron, why haven't you retired? But I think one reason I continue to do this work is that I look around me and I see so many people who have so many gifts and they have so much potential, who are adrift, who don't seem to have any direction, who feel, irrelevant and isolated. And frankly, it kind of breaks my heart. Yeah. Because I see what's possible. I see what can happen when we choose to live with purpose, to live for something bigger than ourselves in these years as we're aging. I see how it brings people to life, and I want to support people in coming to life. That's just who I am. It's so important to me. Yeah. And that's why I keep doing this work, doing the writing I do.
Yep. That's why I continue to do what we're doing as well. I mean, we own an in-home care agency, we own a hospice agency, and we have this podcast. And I use the podcast as a way to, is the horn that to be able to, shout from the mountaintops, to tell people, to inspire people, to get people to look upwards, to be in, and so many people are looking downward. They've given up, and I don't want, especially when you retire, there just seems to be a pattern in some people's lives that retirement means they've given up and now they're just going to sit around the house and watch TV, but that only lasts for so long. And then they lose that sense of purpose. They lose that sense of meaning to life. And, I think we can do better than that. And I appreciate your book because it's inspiring to lift people's eyes upward to do better and to find the purpose and the meaning. Because your purpose and meaning is different than mine, and vice versa out there. And I think each individual has to have that responsibility to take that upon themselves.
And Mark, I think that one primary reason that so many people seem to just be adrift, as you're talking about, after retirement age, is that the world we live in doesn't present any kind of a model for people of what truly healthy aging can be. And, I think that current society doesn't know what to do with older people. Most of the time when you hear them talked about in the news, it's not for the contributions that they're making, but it's for the fact that how are we going to keep Medicare and Social Security going? And yet we might bankrupt the government in doing so. I mean, that's the context. And so if you don't have a vision for what true elderhood can be, and most societies throughout history up until a couple hundred years ago had a clear vision for people to aspire to. If you don't have a vision, then people think, well, this is the best I can hope for.
Yeah. Is that where you come in with the word conscious in your title in the book and having that awareness? People just need to take that responsibility to be conscious and aware.
Yeah. And I think that To me, the word conscious really does mean aware, but it means aware of several different kinds of things that I'll speak of for just a couple moments now. Becoming more conscious is becoming increasingly aware of what is our own unique inner voice, what is our own unique truth, what are our own unique aspirations, as opposed to the many voices in each of us, from our parents and from our society and from the world around us, telling us what's important, what's possible, what to aspire to. So it's becoming more aware of our own voice. To me, becoming more conscious means becoming increasingly aware of all those what are often called shadow elements in ourselves, those areas where we're wounded or we're not integrated or we're carrying around a lot of old baggage that we've all accumulated throughout our lives that sap our energy, so that as we age, we're not going to have the energy there to support any positive aspirations we might have. So it's becoming more aware of that. To me, becoming increasingly conscious is becoming more aware of the reality that you and I and all of us are part of a very, very interconnected, interdependent world, and that my well-being and your well-being depends upon seeing how we can help to support the well-being of the larger whole, giving our gifts to help support the well-being of the larger whole, because we can't be healthy if the larger whole is not healthy. And so that's part of what becoming more conscious is. To me, becoming more conscious means becoming increasingly aware of when we are living out of habit, as most of us tend to do. And by the time we get to our 60s and 70s, we've developed a lot of habits. And if we're just living out of habit, then we're not even consciously aware of what we're doing. We're just kind of like automatons, just kind of operating through old habits. So becoming aware of when we're living out of habit, so we can begin to make more conscious choices of how we're going to live, what we're going to aim for, what attitudes we're going to have, how we're going to react to things. And I'll say one more, and I think this is central to conscious eldering. Conscious to me means becoming increasingly aware that we are not just our personalities and our egos doing whatever we do, but that there is some kind of an essence in us, call it whatever you will, but something that is deeper than just our personality selves. Some people call it spirit, some call it soul, some call it the inner self. It doesn't matter what you call it, but there's something else there. And that is the source of our, if we are willing to and we learn how to tap into it, that's the source of our guidance, the source of our healing, the source of our purpose, the source of our resilience as we move into these elder years, which can be so very challenging. And so conscious to me involves all of those different aspects that I just spoke of, Mark.
Yeah. Yeah. And, when you put on these seminars, they're in Colorado, is that correct? Or do you go all over the world to put these on?
Well, we don't do a ton of them. We do maybe 3 or 4 a year. The place where we have done the most is beautiful Ghost Ranch, New Mexico. Some of your listeners may know about that incredible place there. And then, I'm going to do one in Ireland. We occasionally do one on the East Coast or one in Canada, but we don't do a lot. We maybe do 3 or 4 a year. They're week-long retreats. We call them Choosing Conscious Elderhood.
Yeah. And so what is the aim for those retreats? And then is what's in those retreats, is it in your book? So if somebody wanted to learn more about the retreats but couldn't, get to the actual physical retreat, they can get it in the book. Is that how it works?
Yeah. The purpose of the retreats, Mark, is to give people an intensive week-long experience. And beautiful natural places open our hearts and minds. We don't do these in some church basement or something. We do them in places that inspire us. And the purpose is to help people become aware of the possibilities of aging consciously, to help them articulate and become very aware and to share in the group, and we have small groups of 13 or 14, the many challenges that come with aging, and to present a lot of different tools and understandings that can help people then take this awareness of the possibilities and actually incorporate that into their lives, so that when they leave, they don't just have a bunch of concepts, but they've had a strong experience that hopefully can help to inform the choices they make and the way they live moving forward. Along the way, I was told by various people, and I became aware that the way our retreat is structured in such a way that I could write a book that in many ways follows the unfolding of one of our retreats. You know, the chapters follow the unfolding of the themes in a retreat. And people tell me that I've done a really good job of doing that, and that if people do read my book, and it's not a page-turner like you read in an airport, it's one of those books that you're really reflective about. If you do that, you do some of the exercises in there, that you could end up really gaining a lot of what you might gain if you are one of those who's able to participate in a retreat. And so in a lot of ways, I view it as you can do a personal retreat with my book if you spend some time and effort and do it really mindfully.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I came away with it is, as I was reading through your book, I was, envisioning myself in a natural setting and envisioning, the principles that you were talking about and applying them and to my own self. And that's the beauty of a book. You got to love that. And that's a reflection of the author and their writing style. And your writing style is so easy to read and it's about story. And it comes out very clear.
Did you know that you can find renewed passion and fulfillment in your life as you age? Conscious elderling expert Ron Pevny shares how in the 10th anniversary edition of his book, Conscious Living, Conscious Aging means much more than just becoming a bit more conscious as we age. It's about embracing a new role in your community, serving and savoring our well-being, and remaining engaged in the possibilities to come. Conscious Living, Conscious Aging, available at all major retailers. This Did You Know moment was provided by today's guest and is brought to you by Royal Hospice of Oregon.
I wanted to ask you a question about aging. And what is it that you're learning as a boomer about aging as opposed to what you experienced with what your parents went through the aging? And how's that different? What did you learn from them? Because I think, you've used, and I do want you to define the term elder, because I think that's a word that needs to be reinstated in our culture.
Yes.
With that comes a lot of respect. So if you could pick up on, how you view aging as a boomer, how you saw it with your parents, because we're we're similar backgrounds. And then picking up on the whole elder concept.
Well, my parents were of the generation where 66 or 70 was really, really considered old. And they acted old. It's like my dad retired, I think, at the age of 65, which was the norm. And pretty much all he aspired to was, I hate this word, was puttering around the house and doing some fishing. And same with my mother. They didn't have any kind of a concept that life after retirement could be something other than just kind of biding your time and trying to get what pleasure you could, even as you experience the natural breakdowns of your body and stuff. I contrast that with the world now, where so much is changing. And thank goodness that there are so many models out there. They have names like successful aging, positive aging, skillful aging, healthy aging. Your audience has probably heard a whole bunch of them. There's conscious aging and conscious eldering. But there are a lot of models that help people see that just because we've reached retirement age doesn't mean we have to stop being active. We can be doing things. We can be volunteering in the community. We can live much longer than ever before because we know so much more about healthy lifestyles and what makes for a healthy lifestyle. So a lot of really positive changes are happening now. I think most people upon retirement age aspire to more than just puttering. Now, to kind of move to the point you make about eldering, because I think it naturally flows from this. I think what's missing from a whole lot of what we're seeing around us in the society now, that is a more positive vision of aging, is some focus on the importance and the potential of personal and emotional and spiritual growth in our latter years. And I think what conscious eldering does is it tries to point out to people that there is indeed a possibility of growing into a true elderhood, bringing forth those qualities that have throughout history defined those honored by their society as elders. It's a possibility of growing into that. And that adds a whole new dimension because that's about who you can be as you age and not just about what you can do. And to me, the ideal is to really recognize that this is a time when I can grow in wonderful ways inwardly and spiritually, and I can be active, and I can hopefully be of service to the world around me. Because elders have always, throughout history, been recognized as those who have, as they have grown old, have grown. They just haven't aged. They have grown inwardly, and out of that growth, then they are able to contribute to the well-being of the world around them. And that's the kind of elderhood that my work tries the best I can to support.
Yeah. And in the subtitle of your book, it's Claiming the Gifts of Elderhood. Is that what you're referring to as the gifts?
Yes. I truly believe, and those that I've been honored to have as mentors have believed and taught that our elder years can be the pinnacle of our emotional and our spiritual growth, even as we inevitably decline physically and we suffer losses and diminishments. What a gift to be able to believe and then work toward growing inwardly. Because just, imagine if you're totally identified, Mark, with the things you can do, and I think a lot of older people I know are, and a lot of people 75, 80 who can do lots of stuff. But what happens when the point comes when you can't do it anymore? Then either you are left in a big, deep hole of depression and loss, or if you have done some inner growth spiritually and emotionally, you see that there's a rich inner life and rich contributions you can make just in smaller ways by the virtue of who you are to the world around you. It's easier to find purpose and meaning if you have grown into elderhood than if that is something that you don't know about or you have not aspired to at all.
Yeah. How do you see yourself along the journey of conscious elderhood? How have you grown in that journey? Because we are all at different places, and you're at a very intense level than the rest of us. Obviously, because you're the author, you're the creator of this. But where are you at?
Where I'm at, Mark, is that I see what's possible. I've had so many mentors and models who have shown me what's possible. I have a lot of days when I begin to feel that I am really growing into the best of what elderhood can be. And I have a lot of days when I see I have quite a ways to go before I truly fulfill my aspirations. I am not there. Maybe I never will be there. Yeah. I think, to be more specific, I think a couple of the big things that I have learned relate to finding a balance between being out there in the world contributing. And I imagine you and your listeners get some sense from hearing me that I have a strong need and sense of calling to contribute. But 15, 20 years ago, I was pushing. I was pushing really hard. It was me struggling. It was me living very much out of balance. I didn't feel I was taking care of my inner life. I wasn't savoring life very much because I was so having to accomplish certain things. And at this point now, my work is still very important, but I'm recognizing I need to give myself space to not just be serving, but to be savoring. And so I try to spend more time just being quiet and enjoying the small things. And I've got 2 granddaughters and enjoying my granddaughters and enjoying nature and being meditative and deepening my own spirituality. There's a part of me that forever has yearned to be a monastic, and that call is still there. And so I'm trying to find ways in the context of my life to give myself a little bit of that kind of monastic kind of experience. And so I'm the interesting thing is I'm finding that I'm doing less than I would have done 10 or 15 years ago, Mark. But since I'm doing it more from a sense of balance, that I feel that I accomplish more with what I do. I'm not pushing so hard, but I'm trusting something bigger than me to kind of be working with me and supporting me. And that's maybe the biggest change that I could point to right now. I trust that it's not just me. There's something else that shows up in the world with me and supports me.
Yeah. And when you use that word monastic, you're using it from a spiritual base. Is that where you're coming from?
Yeah. What I'm meaning that there is a part of me that very, very much wants retreat time, meditative time, the kind of things you would do if you went to a monastery of some sort or other. A part of me that yearns for more of that. And one of my commitments, and I've got a list of my intentions for these years ahead, and one of those strong, strong intentions for me is that I want to create a life in the time I have left where every year I give myself at least a month, either in one chunk or in smaller pieces, where I can just go off on retreat and just look at my life and look at my spirituality and just focus within and not put any of my energy outwardly into my work. That feels really important.
Yeah. In your travels, as you meet people along the way, because you're walking this journey, and as you draw alongside of other people that are walking down this path as well, what are some of the things that you've learned from them about conscious living, conscious aging? What are some of their fears that you've been able to, listen to as they tell their story?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've been privileged to guide quite a few people on these retreats. And I have to acknowledge that it's a very self-selected group who comes on who's willing to devote a week of their lives and the resources and everything to come on a retreat. So I don't know if they represent just the average Joe and Jill, but among the kind of people who come on our retreats and I have the most conversations with, probably the number one fear or concern is losing their mental abilities. That is very, very frightening to a lot of people. Alzheimer's and dementia is very frightening. I think the fear of getting some kind of a chronic disease that, saps their energy and their strength and their joy is a big one. But other than those two, the thing I hear the most often, and I think the reason that people give for coming on these retreats is that they really, really fear and dread irrelevance. And they maybe used to be relevant during their careers, but now oftentimes they feel irrelevant. They feel isolated. They feel invisible, the 3 I's. And they hate that. They don't want that.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
sense something else is possible, but they don't know what that is. And so some, almost out of desperation, learn about something like one of my retreats or some of the many other good things that are happening out there to support people who are aging. They learn about this hoping that they can leave with some understanding of how their life can be relevant in what can be 20, 25 years after retirement. That's a big fear for many people.
Yeah, one of the things I was thinking as you were just describing that is being an elder gives you a sense of depth and breadth to life. And when we're younger, we're so busy with the hurriedness of the day, the tyranny of the urgent, I call it. And we're like a raging river, and we don't take the time to stop and reflect. And the beauty of being at this place in life, I'm loving it because it's helped me to be more reflective. And upon that reflection, I'm taking more time to care for myself than I ever have.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. And, that's possible for so many people. I honor anybody who has lived a long time and suffered the many slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, and made it to a good long life. I honor them all. But to my mind, the term elder is reserved for people who have really chosen to grow into this life stage that I call elderhood. A stage where they're committed to growth. They're committed to service. They're committed to doing the kind of work we call the inner work of conscious eldering, where you take a look at your life and you heal those things from the past that need to be healed. And you get really in touch with what are the deepest, truest yearnings of my heart that I'm going to aspire to that can make a difference for me and for the world around me. That's a whole state of being those are the ones that I honor with the term elder. So I just wanted to clarify that. And that's why I say I think there's a difference between growing older, just merely growing older, and growing elder.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense right there. Yeah. Well said. Well said. You talk about in your book the 4 influencers, people that have made a difference in your life, that have influenced you along the way. Can you describe a little bit more about those 4 influencers? And I think the first one, and I wrote this down because I wanted to learn more about these influencers. These are the universal dynamics of the life transition. And that's something, that I wanted to bring some more clarity to from your perspective. Okay. Go ahead, and we'll start with that one, the first one.
One thing that societies throughout history have understood that we have lost track of in our modern industrial society is that humans don't just move through life, moving on some kind of a straight continuum, but rather they grow and they change as a result of major transitions in life. And for, there are various particular transitions that you've experienced that are different than the ones I've experienced, Mark. But there's some that are predictable that we all experience, and those are major transitions at certain points in life. The transition from youth into adulthood, the transition from adulthood and midlife crisis really is a time of transition for many people. And then there's the huge transition from midlife adulthood into this whole life stage called elderhood. And these transitions of necessity require that we let go of some sense of who we have been up to that point. Yeah, we review our lives carefully, but we let go of some sense of who we have been that won't serve us moving forward. And then we enter an in-between place where we really don't know who we are. We can feel lost and adrift, but it's a natural place because that's where the seeds of new beginnings start to gestate. And then gradually we'll start to move into the new chapter of our life, the new beginning, the new stage. And that's the process of transition. And it for people, going through this big transition from midlife adulthood into elderhood, understanding this and understanding there's certain dynamics we have to acknowledge, including the need to let go and to honor that in-between space before we try to go frantically jumping into something else. That's really important in our growth, and gradually a new chapter will begin if we honor this whole process. But first we have to understand it, and things like my book help people to gain some understanding of the process.
Yeah. One of the principles of my life has always been the mark of a smart man is not that he knows everything, but he knows where to find out about everything. And so the second influencer in your life was a rabbi, or was there several rabbis? And I wanted you to talk about the wisdom, because I love the word wisdom and rabbi together, because remember my definition of wisdom comes from the Hebrew word 𝙍𝙤𝙣, and it literally means living life skillfully. So the point that I think you're going to make here is that if you really want to be successful in life, surround yourself with successful people.
That's right. And if you really want to see what's possible in human growth and development, find people who really seem to model the best of what's possible. And one of those big influences for me was Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shalomi. Now, I'm not Jewish myself, but Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shalomi was one of these incredibly progressive thinkers who recognized the wisdom in all the world's traditions. And he, along with Ram Dass, who many of your listeners may be familiar with, a very well-known spiritual teacher for the last 40 years who died a few years ago, he and Ram Dass and others ended up coming up with the whole concept of conscious aging. And then Rabbi Zalman Schachter Shalomi wrote the seminal book, I think, in about conscious aging, and it's called From Aging to Saging. And he's the most incredible model because so many of his understandings came from understanding the growth traditions around the world and weaving them together in a model that he called saging. And in many ways, my work draws on that, but it also draws very, very heavily from my strong understandings of the rite of passage tradition. But for many, many people, he was the premier model, and his work lives on in the form of an organization called Saging International that your listeners might want to check out because they're a wealth of wonderful resources in their website. Saging International is the name of the organization.
All right. So principle number one, the influencers in your life that has helped you to understand conscious living, conscious aging, has been understanding the universal dynamics of life transitions, and then surrounding yourself with more brilliant people than yourself, like the rabbi that you were referring to. I'm not Jewish either, but it doesn't matter, what your spiritual influence is. There's spiritual influencers all around us, and there's nuggets of truth, nuggets that we all should be embracing, because all truth is God's truth.
That's right. And we all need models.
Yeah.
And I think when you live in a society that doesn't have any kind of an empowering model for older adults, we need to look for those people that are just aging beautifully. And we know them. I mean, there's a light that shines, and you've met people, Mark. I've met people where when you're with them, even if they've lost all kinds of physical abilities and all, there's a kind of an inner light that shines. You want to be around them. You see that there's something special about them. And those are the kind of people that we can all find if we open ourselves to it and we look for them. And if we can't find one on our own, my book or other good books or whatever can point the direction to help us find such models around us. They can be critical.
Yeah. And another influencer that you've surrounded yourself with is not only just the rabbi and just understanding transitions of life, but then the other sojourners that come to your workshops, the sojourners that read your book. And as you walk the talk and talk the walk throughout everyday living, you're meeting all kinds of great people. And those are some of your influencers as well. Is there anybody that you had one of those aha moments when you met somebody and you go, I get it? Have you ever had that?
Yes, I've been privileged to have that. And I got to say that one of those moments came when a woman who was, I was in my late 50s and she was already into her 70s. But her name is Anne. And she came to one of our retreats. And I saw this woman with a passion for continually learning and for continually making a difference and continually growing. And I was so impressed with her that it turned out that she ended up evolving into my primary retreat partner for 15 years.
Oh,
and
wow.
Now Anne is 90. I'm 76. She's 90. She's no longer able to do retreats with me, but she is doing online classes, including one that she's just starting next month that she calls Aging into the 80s, and it's for people in their 80s in an online Zoom format who want to learn about the challenges and opportunities of being an elder when you're in your 80s. And so I've been privileged to have several of these bright lights in my life. But I think a larger point that I would take from your question, I would say, Mark, that it is critical to find a community of kindred spirits if we aspire to aim high as we age. Maybe that's one or two, maybe that's three or four, but find some people in our life that we could share our deepest understandings and our fears and our aspirations and our joys, and we can support each other, because I don't think you can age in the way that I talk about in isolation. You need some kindred spirits, some true community to support you, and you help to support them.
Yeah. Is there one thought in your mind that you want our listeners to go away with that is the essence of what your book is all about? Is so that, I really was so impressed with your writing. I was so impressed with the topic, and we need a greater and a deeper discussion about this so that we're aging consciously, we're living consciously in our retirement years. And I just don't want to see people, be cast to the side. I want people to live their best life possible, whatever that means to them. Is there some nugget that you can leave us with?
I think the most important thing I would leave you and your listeners with, Mark, is that we all know that we live in a world that is in crisis. And we live in a world where it is hard to find true wisdom. We see a lot of idiots out there with a lot of power. But look where they're taking the world, look where they're taking the environment, look where they're taking society. There are millions and millions and millions and millions of us who are retiring, who have gifts to give, who have skills to give, who have good health and have energy. And we can make a difference. The world needs the gifts of conscious elders. We can't retire from life and retire giving our gifts just because we've retired from our jobs. We have gifts to give, and it's so important to find our way of giving them. And the more we can grow in consciousness, the more we'll know what our way is and how we can best give those gifts to others while at the same time finding fulfillment for ourselves.
Well said. And, I think about all the indigenous cultures around the world and in our country as well. Being an elder was important to the society. It was important to the young people to look up, have somebody to look up to for that depth and that breadth of life. And I hope that we can get to that place. because there's so much wisdom. You know, the internet and where we're going today can bring us a lot of knowledge. But without that wisdom, knowledge is empty. And I fear for our younger generations that I hope they will embrace their elders. I hope they will embrace wisdom. And it's great to know a lot of things. There's nothing wrong with that. But it has to be surrounded and couched in wisdom and in love.
And there's a big gulf between the generations now. I think we all know that. But part of that is that young people don't have many models for what a really fulfilled elderhood can be. And so I think it's incumbent on all of us who feel called to true elderhood to grow into it and to show younger people that, hey, as you think about your own aging, just look at how alive and vibrant and meaningful the lives of older people can be. And when younger people start to see more and more of that, Mark, then gradually a lot of these ageist stereotypes are going to start to fall away. But it's up to us. I don't expect younger people to honor me as an elder just because I'm old. I expect them to honor me because they see something in me and the way I want to be with them and everything that they think, wow, that's really appealing. I'm drawn to that.
I agree. I agree so wholeheartedly. Ron, we're up against the end of our interview here, and I'm just so grateful that our paths have crossed. I loved your book. We're of similar kindred, and maybe I can make it out to one of your workshops here in the future. And I'm inspired by your proclivity to want to help others become more conscious of the way they're living and the way they're aging. And I love the way you're challenging all of us to change the way we look at ourselves. When you change the way you look at life, the way you look at aging will change. And so I'm inspired by that.
Well, thank you, Mark. And Mark, I would like to tell your listeners that they can learn a whole lot about conscious eldering and our work. They can read many, many articles. They can see interviews. They can, there's poetry. There's all kinds of inspirational material in our website. Learn about our retreats. And our website is centerforconsciouseldering.com. I know that's a lot. centerforconsciouseldering.com.
All right. Thank you so much, Ron, for being on Aging Today. And when you write that sequel or the updated version, reach out to me and let's get you on again and have another lively discussion here on Aging Today.
Thank you, Mark. I've really enjoyed talking with you.
All right. This is Mark Turnbull, your host, and I want to thank all of you for tuning in to Aging Today. As a reminder, we are the podcast where together we're exploring the many options to aging on your terms. Join us every Monday when we release a new conversation on Aging Today to your favorite podcast channel. And remember this, we're all in the process of aging, and as we age, we really are better together. So stay young at heart.
You make me feel so young. You make me feel like spring has sprung. And every time I see your face, I'm such a happy individual. The moment that you speak, I want to go play hide and seek. I want to go and bounce the moon just like a toy balloon. Well, you and I are just like a couple of tots running across the meadow, picking up lots of forget-me-nots. So you made me feel so young. You made me feel there are songs to be sung, bells to be rung, and a wonderful fling to be flung. And even when I'm old and gray.
You've been listening to Aging Today, where together we explore the options to aging on your terms. Join Mark and his guest next week for another lively discussion on proactively aging on your terms. connecting you to the professional advice of his special guests, with the goal of creating better days throughout the aging process. Your host has been Mark Turnbull. Join Mark and his guests every week on Aging Today, your podcast to exploring your options for aging on your terms.
And even when I'm old and gray, you make me feel the way I feel today. 'Cause you make me feel so. You make me feel so. You make me feel so young. So young. You make me feel so young. You make me feel so young.